Welcome to the wonderful world of mycology. This is a really interesting kingdom of life with a vast amount of diversity, and it's also a profitable thing to have knowledge of. This is something that you can grow and make a good amount of money on. So, mycology, myco just means fungus, but it might as well mean money. And then ology means study of, and so this is just a this is one of my favorite things to personally talk about. So let's just get started by watching a video of how this guy right here took his knowledge of fungus. He used to just pick them for fun when he was a kid. He took his knowledge of fungus and he's actually made a pretty profitable business from this. And the cool thing is you can do this too. This is not an unachievable thing. So check this out.
A day and a half ago, this thing was the size of the tip of my pinky. There's been stories of toxic waste cleanup by mushrooms. Without mushrooms, we would be overrun with waste. There would not be any life on Earth. Ganoderma lucidum sensistricto. It's known as the mushroom of immortality. They're antiviral, antibacterial. It's been shown to shrink and terminate tumor growth. Yeah, we do about 180 bags per cycle, and we do that 3 times a week. Yeah, this used to be done in my house. Yeah, we have some shiitake mushrooms right here.
So keep in mind as you watch this video, this guy's been doing this for many, many years, probably over 10 years at this point. He started this in his own house, and there's lots of videos of people actually doing that. Along a similar line, I actually had a student who watched this and he started his own microgreen business. And I don't know how he's doing with it today, but I do know that when he started, he was making a good little chunk of money. So just a fun little thing you can do, a little side hustle. So right now, he's handling these fully grown bricks. This stuff, this brown stuff here is called medium. And you need different medium for every mushroom. Some mushrooms like to grow on logs. Some like to grow on like cedar wood chips, which I think is what he's using here. Some actually grow on insects. Every fungus has an optimal medium that it uses, and that's just something that you need knowledge and time to understand. But certainly, there's lots of resources out there to find that out. All you have to do is figure out what you're growing and then just ask Google. Be like, hey Google, what type of medium should I grow reishi in? And it will probably give you 1,000 answers. Because there's lots of people that are actually doing this.
Here's the top search result.
No, Google, I wasn't talking to you. Sorry.
Here that are ready to go.
There's thousands of ways that these guys can save our world and make our environment that much better to live in.
Cultivating fungi and mushrooms is like a balance between science and art. I'm gonna be taking a look inside of my, this is the spawn incubation /
So he's going inside of his spawn incubation chamber. So what does it mean when I say, or he says, spawn? So if you look at the typical mushroom, this is the one that you are probably used to seeing. Bacillus, I think is its name. Wait, that's the shape of a bacteria. Basidium. Basidium? I think that's what it is. We'll find out later. So mushrooms, if you ever looked at the bottom of a mushroom, it has these gills. And if you wipe them, I'll try to bring a sample to class. If you wipe them, you can find this powder. That powder is made of spores, and those spores can actually create new fungus. So if this spore lands on this guy's shoulder here, a new fungus could grow out of that. Not really, of course, because living things have immune systems, and it stops that. But if you were dead, yeah, sure, why not? So he's going to go in there, and he's got a couple of things here I can already see. He's got these little vials of broth, and then he has solidified broth in these little plates. And so what you're going to see is he's got these plates where he has a whole bunch of white fungus called mycelium that is growing. And what he's going to do is he's going to get that, and he's going to transfer just a little bit inside each of these. And inside of that nutrient-rich broth filled with a specific profile of amino acids that all he had to do was Google, he's going to then start to make a whole lot of that. And from that liquidy growth medium, all he has to do is pour that onto a sterilized medium, which was, like I said, either cedar wood chips or sawdust or logs or whatever he happens to be using. So it's a very simple process, really, with just subtle things that you can do to make it more efficient. So let's check that out.
Culture media room, and I'm just gonna select out some cultures for today and take a look at some of my spawn. Today, I will be taking little pieces of tissue from these plates and dropping them into nutrient media broths to basically expand the mycelium. Yeah, my name is Michael Crow, and
So yeah, that's basically what I just said. This stuff right here is probably one of the most valuable things that he owns, especially over time. What he's doing is, just like any farmer, he's going to selectively breed fungus that is the fastest growing, the most nutrient dense, or the most medicinal, and he's going to put them on these plates. So each of these plates is extremely valuable to him. Probably some of the most valuable material that he has at his lab is in his hands right now, inside of this special chamber. This is the parent to all of his mushrooms, and he's going to multiply that inside of these broth containers.
I own Southwest Mushrooms. Here we cultivate a wide variety of gourmet and medicinal mushrooms.
So you can see he just did it. He just took a little chunk there, he put it in there. He's going to put them in all of these, and that is going to multiply his stock mushroom. And then he just pours that liquid, after it's had some time to grow the mycelium, onto his growth medium. You might be wondering what all this is for. That is sucking in air. Now, you don't need to have that. It is really nice. I mean, again, this guy's probably been doing this for a long time. He's got a big, high-dollar facility where he can do this kind of thing. The reason he has these air vents is to suck in any rogue spores that happen to be flying around. You have to keep in mind he's in a mushroom lab. There's spores everywhere that he can't even see. I mean, there's spores around you right now. Fungus are just everywhere, especially molds. And so he's trying to prevent molds from landing in his broth and cross-contaminating onto his precious petri dishes. He doesn't want that mold to compete with his big dollar fungus. And so he's going to prevent that with these little hoods here. He also has a sterilizing, these things are really cool. This is like a sterilizing little, what would you call that, chamber, where he sticks his utensils into. I guess this is like a knife. He just sticks that in there and it cooks the tip to make sure that there's no bacteria or mold on that either. It's just, you want to keep things clean as you do this. You want to make sure that you're not risking the contamination of your stock.
Yeah, we just dropped a couple chunks of mycelium tissue of cordyceps. Mycology is the study.
We're going to talk about cordyceps, probably the most interesting fungus. They infect the brains of insects. It's kind of spooky. They make zombie insects that their sole purpose becomes to infect other insects. Literally something out of a zombie movie. They infect other insects to make them zombies too. Really bizarre. And you know what's even weirder? We humans see that and we're like, hey, let's eat it. And we have. And guess what? It doesn't make us zombies. It actually makes us more athletic. Cordyceps have been found to show pretty dramatic effects on athletic performance by increasing oxygen absorption into cells. I actually take this supplement on a daily basis, and I can tell you that when I don't take it, I notice a difference. I definitely do. So, very cool fungus and very profitable if you can figure out how to grow it, of course.
Of fungi and basically the growth of different fungi. People don't realize that there is such a wide array of different mushrooms out there, molds. And
that's true. We're actually going to talk about that. This is probably the mushroom that you're used to seeing. Basidium. But that's actually not the most common fungus. The most common fungus is actually Ascomycota, which grows like a cup. And you will actually see a lot of those here. But there are also fungus that don't make mushrooms at all. They just grow underground, and you don't even see the reproductive part of it. What a fungus really is the part underground, the mycelium, that stringy stuff, that feeding tubes. Here you can actually see them starting. So he's got this under a microscope. I love this image. Each one of these is a spore. And when these spores find something to eat, they start randomly growing out these hyphae, which is just a collection of cells. So here on this hyphae, we can see that there's 5 cells in a row. And what's interesting here is if you look carefully, you can see that the cell walls have little holes in them. These cell walls in between each of these is not complete. It's not like a plant. Plants grow very strictly. They grow like this. That's a plant. And they usually grow in big clusters like a leaf. But fungus don't. Their hyphae grow in straight columns that is only one cell layer thick, and then they somewhat divide the membranes, but they put holes in them. And the reason that there's holes in the cell wall is actually to aid in reproduction, because these fungus actually trade nucleus to reproduce. We'll get into all of that much later, but I just want you to keep this image in your mind. Here we're seeing 2 things. We're seeing these hyphae here, and we're seeing individual spores.
Fungi starts from spores rather than seed. 2 compatible spores will mate and form mycelium. The mycelium starts out, we plant it on a petri dish, and from there we transfer healthy sectors of mycelium into bags of sterilized grain. Here we have organic.
So this is his growing medium for that, what was it, the mushroom that grows on insects? Cordyceps, yes. He's taking grain here, and that's his growing medium for this particular fungus. But he's also got over here wood chips, and he's probably got, sawdust. Every fungus likes a different thing to grow on.
Organic wheat berries that we use. From there, mycelium will spread and devour whatever food source that it's working with. Full colonization occurs. You'll see a big, nice, healthy.
See, look how white that is. This is the same medium that you just saw before. It is that grain, but it's white now. So what's going on? Well, it's white because that mycelium, or those spores, have grown into mycelium, and it's slowly decomposing that grain. This is what nature does. If you ever go outside and you peel back a layer of soil or you peel back a layer of grass, you will see this white stuff growing underneath. If you've ever wondered, like, what happens to all the leaves on the ground, they eventually get decomposed this way. This is how nature recycles things. And so you can actually see that. Probably the best example would be on cheese. So one of my favorite cheeses, I actually made the mistake of eating an entire brick of this the other day because it's so delicious. This is brie cheese. And so it's, as you can see, pretty expensive. And I was really hungry. But, at Food Lion, I think it was only like $5, probably because I got cheap brie. But anyway, the white layer on the outside here is actually pure mycelium. And it's made from a fungus you're probably familiar with. This is from penicillium. And penicillium is actually famous for making an antibiotic. It makes a chemical that we call penicillin. Maybe you're familiar with it. It was the first antibiotic to ever be discovered by total accident. There was a scientist, he was trying to figure out how to kill botulism, actually, which is a deadly bacteria that was killing people. He was trying to figure out how to kill it, and he just could not figure it out. He got frustrated. He went on vacation. He came back, and all of his bacteria samples were dead. Now, why were they dead? They were dead because it turns out that in the mushroom lab above him, the spores went through the ventilation system and came and infected his petri dishes. And where those fungus started to grow, the bacteria was killed. And we discovered that bacteria and fungus are actually having a war that dates back to the dawn of life. And we can take advantage of that war by harvesting the chemical weapons that fungi use against their competing decomposing bacteria. They both want to decompose things. They're both trying to decompose each other. They're both trying to kill each other. Fungi use antibiotics to kill bacteria. We can take that from them and use it as medicine. And so here's the funny part of this story. I ate this full thing of brie cheese. Now, turns out I'm actually allergic to penicillin, right? And so what happened to me when I ate this full thing of brie, I actually broke out in hives and rashes. And that was just a very strong reminder that, oh, that's right, fungi actually make antibiotics. I gave myself an allergic reaction by eating penicillium found on brie cheese. So if you ever eat brie and you start to get a rash, that's actually why. It's because of the antibiotic naturally being made inside of the penicillium. Kind of cool. Anyway, that was a big tangent. Sorry about that. Let's get back to business.
The bag of white mycelium, this can get broken up and utilized to inoculate anywhere from 20 to 30 of our production blocks. Without good spawn, you don't have mushrooms. A lot of people that will try to get into growing mushrooms because they've grown like a lot of plants before think that, it'll be basically like kind of similar, but it's definitely totally different. You're germinating spores on petri dishes, you're growing out the mycelium, you're doing transfers into like sterilized grain substrates as opposed to soils. Yeah, this is our production area. This is where our substrate gets made. We use a blend of oak hardwood sawdust plus added supplements like organic wheat.
So this is not the same substrate you just saw. This is his homemade. You can just buy substrate from other people when you first get started. This guy is next level. He bought a machine that is rotating this stuff around and breaking it down for him.
And certain seed holes to basically formulate our substrate to get the maximum efficiency from our mushrooms. Bags are filled up to approximately 10 to 12 pounds, and then from there we make our way into the sterilization area where the substrate will be sterilized for a prolonged period of time to make sure we kill off any microorganisms or competitor molds or fungi. Nothing's needed, it's all sterile, so you don't need to use any kind of like pesticides or any kind of fertilizers or additives. You have to really take a lot of care into making sure that you're only growing the fungi that you desire. This is the sterilization room. This is where we sterilize all of our substrate.
So these are the autoclaves I told you, but just an industrial size. At least I think it's an autoclave. I would think that would be the logical thing to use. And what it's going to do is apply a lot of pressure to his substrate, which will kill any living thing inside of it.
In here, we can sterilize up to 1,600 pounds of fresh substrate at a time. And basically steam comes through and sterilizes.
I was dead wrong. I'm sorry. It's not an autoclave. That would actually be very dangerous at that size, come to think of it. So that's just steam. He's just using really hot steam. And I guess that makes a lot more sense. But I guess I don't own a mushroom farm, so how would I know? Give me a break.
At a high temperature, about 212 degrees. If it's not sterilized properly, you'll take it in to inoculate and you'll run into a lot of contamination problems and molds outgrowing your mycelium. We have our spawn right here. This is a California reishi. So we'll take our spawn and just kind of break it up, separate each individual grain.
So if you've ever had a compost pile like a garden, if you have a garden, you need to create soil for that garden to help things grow better. And people will have compost piles where they decompose leftover food from their kitchen, right? So if you have eggshells or you have vegetables that were starting to go bad, you put it in the compost pile, and basically fungi and bacteria will break it down for you. And so one of the ways that you can actually increase the rate of decomposition is to break things up. You see, the thing is bacteria have to touch in order to eat. And so let's say that we have a particle of wood this big, right? A particle of wood this big. Mycelium can touch that. They can, well, I shouldn't use green because that looks like a plant. Hold on. They can grow up to it, and any place they touch, they can start to decompose. So how do we increase the rate? Well, what you do is you break down your medium, and he's doing that physically by just jostling the bag around, and that's going to create a whole bunch of new surfaces. I just created a surface there, 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 there. I created a whole lot of new surfaces by breaking this up, and all those new surfaces can now be touched by the mycelium. They can start using their digestive juices to break that down faster, which is going to make the fungus reproduce quicker. So he's increasing the rate of decomposition and therefore increasing how fast his mushrooms will grow. And nature kind of does this on its own. A tree falling over, weather, wind, rain, they all contribute to breaking things up naturally. And so you're kind of just assisting this along physically.
Allow that to become a vehicle for our mycelium. So I'll take a scalpel and then I'll heat sterilize it. The HEPA filter right here is basically providing us just a clean workspace to perform our inoculations. So we're getting a stream of sterile air. It's eyeballed. I'm pretty good at eyeballing it, so that's what I do. So yeah, the bag's placed in front of the flow hood, inflated with a little bit of that sterile air, and then sealed. All right, so now our bag's inoculated, and then we're just gonna wanna shake it up. All right, that bag's done. People think that all mushrooms are grown in the dark, on manure. We have wood-loving mushrooms, mushrooms that can grow on insects, and mycorrhizal species of mushrooms that can connect with like different plants. This area is our shiitake incubation area. The shiitake generally takes 8 weeks before we can get it into the fruiting room. We can see the mushrooms at this stage beginning to like popcorn. As the mushroom begins to mature, you let the blocks ripen and they begin to turn brown. And this is a block that's ready to go into our fruiting room. It's ripe and ready. Yeah, generally a lot of new growers will mistake the brown for a contamination, but that's actually just the mycelium ripening and getting ready to produce a good crop of mushrooms. And yeah, over here we have some fresh...
Note to self, browning is not a bad thing. These are the little things you have to know, otherwise you might throw away that whole bag, right?
The inoculated blocks, we can see the mycelium starting to jump off from the grain that it was inoculated with and looking for sawdust to basically break down and utilize as a food source. In nature, you'd find oyster mushrooms growing off of the sides of trees. So here we kind of try to...
Just keeping track here, the shiitake mushrooms are those really big mushrooms that you find in the grocery store, very brown. And just a reminder, he grew that on sawdust, I think. And then this is sawdust. And this is a wood-loving fungus now. This is the oyster fungus. One of my favorite funguses. The oyster fungus is awesome because it can actually break down oil. Now you can imagine why that might be a cool thing. Imagine there is some sort of industrial area and there's an oil spill. How do you get the oil out of the soil? Oyster fungus. They're really good at it, and they actually, not only will they clean that oil up, but they enrich the soil and turn a terrible bad thing into a really good thing. Oyster fungus are awesome, and they like to grow on wood, apparently, so he's using wood chips to grow these particular fungus instead of sawdust.
Simulate that way of growth with this block. Inside is...
Oh, so you have to think, if this is a wood-growing fungus, you have to think about, like, its life cycle. So, if I remember this video correctly, he's about to tell you. Now, if you are a decomposing tree, and you're standing upright with all these fungus growing inside of you, when does the fungus have to leave the tree? Well, it better leave that tree if the tree is about to be completely decomposed. And the signal for that is when the tree falls over. So in nature, if you are a fungus that infects trees, you better start growing your reproductive parts, the mushroom itself, once the tree crashes and hits the ground. And so watch what he does to simulate a tree crashing in the forest.
Oak hardwood sawdust, and the bag kind of acts as an artificial bark, tree bark. So when we give it an incision, it kind of just acts as in nature when the mycelium starts poking out at the right points and receiving the right O2 levels that sends mushrooms out Once it completely devours all of its food source, the mycelium signals to produce mushrooms. Basically, the mushrooms will start pinning within a few days. You'll start to see a bunch of little baby mushrooms forming all over the block. Usually they'll have like a stem and a cap. Underneath the cap will be the gills, and the gills are responsible for like producing all the spores that the mushroom will utilize to continue the life cycle. We grow mushrooms that in nature you'd find them growing right in the forest, right off the sides of different trees. So we try to give these mushrooms a little bit of light stimulation, kind of just similar to what you'd get in like a shaded part of the forest. What we do is as our blocks are ready to go in the grow room, we slap our blocks with our hands to basically stimulate the tree falling in nature.
Yes, he's not just being kinky. He's slapping those bags. It just sounds really bad to say that. I apologize to anybody watching this. So he's slapping those bags. He's slapping those bags. I am going to get this out eventually, so that he can simulate a tree crashing in the forest. And when the tree crashes in the forest, that's a signal. Hey, I better leave this tree. This tree is about to be gone. I'm a fungus. I need to find another thing to decompose, or there goes my genetic line. So it finds another tree by growing a mushroom. And so he's trying to get mushrooms to grow so he can sell them. So he's slapping that bag in order to simulate that growth.
Shock the mycelium into growing. Once the tree or branch would hit the floor, the mycelium would be shocked into producing the mushrooms because it's basically thinking that its life cycle is coming to an end. That's what mushrooms do. They're basically nature's like grand decomposers. Their job is to break things down and turn it into organic material that can be reused by the environment. There's been stories of toxic waste cleanup by mushrooms, mushrooms being able to break down oils, kind of like the immune system for the planet. Also plastics in the environment. Without mushrooms, we would be overrun with waste. Basically, there would not be any life on Earth. Mushrooms are very crucial to the environment and ecosystem.
And what a terrific thing he's bringing up here. We are that's one of the biggest problems we're facing in terms of the environment right now, is just the amount of non-recyclable things that we are just pumping out there. We have, I'm sure you've heard of Trash Island. That's larger than the state of Texas. It is an entire island made of plastic waste. And we have plastics and things that can't be readily broken down by nature all over the place. And so by studying fungus and looking at how they achieve this, we can get a better idea of how to do it ourselves, which really means that studying mushrooms, mycology, should be a highly pursued subject, I would think. A very important subject for today's current political, or I guess our current needs of the planet.
Started when I was about 15. I just got interested in mushrooms, picked up a couple books, and was just really fascinated by the whole process, how something can just start from spores, something that we really can't see with the naked eye, into just being able to devour things at such a fast rate and produce these mushrooms. And by the time I was 16, I was growing mushrooms as a hobby and just became really hooked on the process. So I started this business after selling some stocks and cashing out my 401k. So I wanted to continue working with mushrooms as for life, I guess, and kind of make it a career path. So and I'll just harvest the mushrooms just by simply cutting as close to the base of the block as possible. And then from there we can go ahead and pack everything in the next warehouse and get everything to the desired weights. Creminis and button mushrooms and portobellos, those are secondary decomposing mushrooms. So those mushrooms desire like manure or compost-based substrates. You wouldn't want to keep that stuff under the same roof just because you don't want any kind of cross-contamination getting into.
I want to point out something here. This guy just mentioned that he cashed out his 401k and he had a bunch of stocks in the stock market and he cashed those out. You actually don't need to do that. You can just go to a farming agency. I really hope I haven't had my finger over the microphone this whole time. Oh, good. No, I haven't. You can just go to I think the USDA and you can get a loan there. They have a lot of farming loans with very low interest designed to stimulate the food production economy. You know, a country, the foundation of any country is our ability to maintain food stocks. We need to be able to feed our people. So governments have a sweet spot for growers, for people who produce food. They need us. So if you want a job that is greatly appreciated by your country, that's definitely it's definitely going to help that you're growing something. So you can get very low interest loans for this stuff. You don't have to have a 401k already. You don't have to already have money. This is something that now what you do have to do is you have to show that you are a wise investment for that bank, like you or that loan company. So you have to actually prove that you know what you're doing, and so it does help to at least know somebody in the business. So for example, when I started growing clams, I have a clam business with my brother. We didn't actually have any experience with growing clams. So we ended up partnering with somebody who did. We just found this guy, his name was Jack, and he had like 10 years of experience growing clams, and we're just like, hey man, come on board, we'll split the business with you. And that's how we kind of got started. That was the only way we were going to get a loan. So, sometimes you have to do that unless you can convince them that you're really knowledgeable of what you're doing. So this guy could have probably done it. I mean, he had already since the age of 15, he was growing mushrooms, and he could have probably shown his experience there, and he probably could have just gotten a loan. So, you don't know until you try, right?
Into your grows. So yeah, we're just specializing in wood-loving species, so species that basically decompose hardwood in nature. You'll find them growing off like fresh trees or basically recently fallen trees. And those strains are like shiitake, oyster mushrooms, more of the medicinal species such as reishi, turkey tail, lion's mane. You'll find maitake growing on
that
oak
last
or
one.
certain...
That last one you just saw was the reishi mushroom. Reishi mushrooms are great. They're a super awesome anti-anxiety mushroom. They actually produce sort of a calming effect when you routinely eat them. If you find a lot of holistic anxiety kind of medications will have that. I don't take that anymore so much, just because I don't really have that problem, but I have taken it before as like an additional thing that was already in one of my mushroom supplements, and I can say it does have a kind of a chilling, sort of a calming effect, if you will. It is a very nice effect.
Hardwoods. Also, the medicinal benefits that they offer are far greater than what you'd find in like a portobello or camini mushroom. These are the mushrooms that contain those anti-cancer,
Lion's mane is one of the hottest new mushrooms out today. Lion's mane has actually been shown to remyelinate worn out axons in your brain. And so your brain, if you have a brain cell, let me just draw a brain cell for you. You have the cell body, and then you have this long part, and then you have these dendrites coming off. This part right here is called your axon, and as you get older, it starts to lose its protective covering. That protective covering is called myelin, and it's basically a layer of saturated fat, which is one of the reasons you actually do need saturated fat in your diet. Don't buy the low-fat diet crap. It's not true. You do need fat in your diet, and this is one of the reasons. This is myelin. Turns out that by eating a moderate amount of saturated fat and taking lion's mane, there's a chemical in that lion's mane that sends that fat to that myelin. And so you can actually slow down, and this is not me just saying this, this is scientifically backed by research. You can find this on Google Scholar, I guarantee it. You can remyelinate worn out axons. So this slows down Alzheimer's, and it has even been shown in with a combination of other drugs to actually reverse the effects of Alzheimer's. So this is a great thing. I take it every day because Alzheimer's runs in my family. My mom takes it. My brother takes it. We all have that in the family. And again, this is all just hearsay, but I have to say that, like, looking at before and after taking this stuff, and especially in my mom, I have to say that it does make you a little bit sharper. There's less ums. You don't say as much. You're a little bit quicker, a little bit sharper. So this is one of those things that I just really think is awesome. And definitely profitable. So lion's mane.
Benefits, those immunomodulating, immune system enhancing benefits. They're antiviral, antibacterial. Like reishi specifically is used in like chemotherapy and cancer treatments. It's been shown to shrink and terminate tumor growth. A lot of
Reishi and also turkey tail. We actually have a lot of turkey tail growing around here. Turkey tail looks like a turkey tail. It grows on wood, similar to the reishi. It's probably related to the reishi, and it has sort of these stripes. There is another fungus that grows here that's not turkey tail, so I wouldn't just go picking them and eating them. And they're also very hard because they're a wood fungus. You need to boil them for like, I think it's 27 hours before they're actually chewable. So most people just make tonics out of them using alcohol to bring out the chemicals. And it's been shown to improve the effectiveness of chemotherapy by reducing the autoimmune effects of chemotherapy. So in other words, you get the effects of chemotherapy on destroying cancer, but the ill effects of that chemotherapy, the side effects, are actually lessened to a pretty significant degree with turkey tail and reishi. So super huge medicinal effects. And again, this should not be a huge surprise. It should not be a big surprise to you or anybody really that a fungus could have medicinal effects. After all, it is where we make the majority of our medicines from. We make most of our medicine by extracting chemicals from from fungus, like antibiotics, for example. So this should not be a surprise that these mushrooms have huge possible benefits.
People that have compromised immune systems are able to utilize certain mushrooms, like shiitake, for instance, has been shown to dramatically increase like production of necessary T helper cells to help fight off infection and keep your body safe. This is called Ganoderma sicile. This is a reishi species from Palmer Woods near Michigan. And this mushroom is mainly used for the medicinal benefits. We can take it and brew it into a tea or make tinctures out of it and utilize it for the health properties. A lot of mushrooms have their own unique like health benefits that you can only get from that mushroom. It's been used by Eastern medicine for about 4,000 years. Shiitake, for instance, produces a polysaccharide called lentinin. That's something that you can only get from shiitake. Oyster mushrooms produce a compound called lovastatin, which naturally reduces blood pressure. Lion's mane produces hericenoids and erinacines, which is able to stimulate nerve growth factor in the brain. Well, here's our lion's mane, also called Hericium erinaceus. It is a wonderful teeth fungi. The mushroom is a medicinal mushroom as well as a culinary delight. It's known for the fact that it can enhance cognitive function, boost your memory, basically.
Again, I take that one every day, and gotta say, I do see a difference. It is a good one.
Enabling people to recover from traumatic brain injuries, helping people deal with Alzheimer's, dementia. We got some regulars out there that love our lion's mane powder and all of our products, really. It just started with like the farmers markets and everybody just being really amazed by our quality of mushrooms. And from there, like chefs started asking us about mushrooms. So we started dealing with chefs, and then now our mushrooms are making it to grocery stores and restaurants all over the state. The reishi is definitely an intensive harvest. So we'll just cut each antler.
As you might be able to imagine, a wood fungus has a wood-like consistency, and that's why it's harder. He's having to apply more force to clipping this.
We're off at the base of the block. It's kind of like a forest of reishi down there. But patience and time. And then there we have the cut right there. And we have a little bit of sawdust attached, so I'll just trim this off.
All right, so I'm going to stop it here just because I just realized I'm so into this topic that I can get carried away. We're already at 39 minutes, so sorry about that. This is the last part of this, or the first part of this series on fungus. And so I just want to point out before I leave, for legal reasons, I have said a lot and recommended a few of these mushrooms. I can't tell you to do that legally. I'm not a doctor. You cannot take my advice as medical advice. I'm just telling you what I use in my life, and that I do enjoy it. And so that's just my opinion, man. Don't take it as medical advice. Anywho's a what's it. So that's all today. I hope you like that. We're going to continue next time. let's see, right about here. So next time we're going to talk about all the different types of fungi, so you can just be a little bit more educated on those types. It's not all a Basidiomycota, which is this guy right here. They're not all club fungus. There are so many varieties you should know about. See you next time.